History is anything but dull and boring, especially when it comes to Delmarva history. For example, did you know Delaware's history is full of heroes and villains, lovers and losers, triumphs and tragedies?
And what is history other than a collection of great stories after all? Thankfully, we have people who preserve those stories and share them with the world. People like author Dave Tabler, who joins us in Historic Studio D this afternoon. You like Historic Studio D?
Yeah. Historic
History
Studio
here
D.
Too. Yeah,
it could be Historic Studio DT. That would suit me just fine.
You'd be okay with
there
that.
you
I'd
go.
be okay
there
with
you go.
that, yeah.
So I have to ask you, how did you get involved in history to begin with?
I had an 8th grade teacher who set me on fire with history, and many children don't have that, but I was so lucky to have Mr. Jarbo, and he was one of these zany people that just made everything a story. And the first day we came into class, he had Pizarro was a pig farmer written in big letters on the screen, or on the board. And of course he didn't tell us at all who that was. But then by the end of the class, he just tips it out, and you'll have to learn the rest in the next class.
Oh.
But yeah, so it was very, so it was like the cliffhanger. Every class.
He kind of threw you a bone.
Every class was a cliffhanger. Fascinating guy.
Amazing. All right, let's talk about Delaware. Why is Delaware's history so special?
Delaware is so special for a lot of reasons. Number one, we are the only state in America where the Swedes had an official colony. And so the Swedish influence is still felt to this day. For example, log cabins. Everyone thinks, oh, the land of Lincoln, Illinois or Kentucky.
Right.
Wrong. The Swedes brought the log cabins over. And so that's something that we're quite proud of as Delawareans.
Wow.
I did not know. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
Oh my goodness, that is amazing. Okay, so you have 2 books, and what was the process of writing these books? Your first book, let's say.
Or your first book.
Right. So the thing that got me interested in doing the first book, I live in Dover, and near Dover there is an octagonal schoolhouse. It's the only one in Delaware. It's probably one of the few in America. There was a period of time where octagonal buildings were the rage, and they all just kind of disappeared. But this one still exists. It's preserved by the state, but it's not promoted very actively. And so I thought, well, that's a shame. It's kind of sitting back, off the road there. There's no fancy signs pointing to it. You have to really seek it out.
Yeah.
And I pitched Delaware Today magazine to do an article about the 10 most interesting things in Delaware. And they're, different direction. They're more of a lifestyle magazine, not a history thing. So I thought, you know what, that needs a book. That needs a book. There are more than 10, by the way, interesting things in Delaware.
Okay.
but,
all right.
but that got me started. And in fact, I photographed that schoolhouse in the back of the book.
Okay.
So.
And this is the first book?
This is the first one right here. I just finished the second one a few moments ago, or a few weeks ago.
As he was walking into
As
the
I was
studio.
walking into the studio. It feels like a few
Finishing
moments.
touches.
Yeah, this will be releasing in November.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah.
Did you just there was so much more that you needed to write about?
So I broke it into
okay.
I broke it into centuries. So the first one is before the railroads, the second one is railroads to freeways.
Oh, wow.
And I'm working on a third one which will be freeways to something, either new ways or skyways or e-ways.
I feel like the history is broken down by transportation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All of the early, and this is true in Maryland also, all of the early towns were right along the coast. And because, the inland was swamps, it was impassable, it was just a mess to get across. It took longer to get across the peninsula back in the 1700s than to get from Lewis up to Philadelphia by boat.
Really?
Isn't that amazing?
That is
How about
amazing.
that? So out of all of this, have you got a favorite anecdote? Now we pushed him up against the wall.
No, that's fine.
Pick a favorite.
there's-
Which one of your kids do you like the most?
There are plenty of favorites. Yes, there are. One of the big challenges to me is taking a story that is not well documented and finding artifacts that match that story. For example, this is one of my favorites. Isaac and Ida Benioff were the first Jewish people to move to Delaware. They moved in the 1880s. They moved down from New York City. The railroads had just come through in the 1860s, and so they were trying to populate stations along the way. And so the railroads actually funded these societies up in New York City to help people who wanted to leave the city find a new home. And so this couple moved to Viola, where there happened to be a railroad station.
Huh.
Well, okay, so they got down here. They had 10 kids. One of their daughters got really ill. Meantime, the father was back in New York City. He had a furrier business in Manhattan. And this was, they couldn't afford telegrams or telegraph, and this was before telephone.
Right.
The daughter dies. The mother puts the daughter on a train to New York in a little coffin and sends it to his office.
Addressed to his office.
He doesn't know his daughter has died, and this coffin shows up. Terrible story. Heart-rending story.
Oh my goodness.
So I didn't know how to tell that story without it being macabre. I mean, it sounds
Yeah.
macabre already. I found a little child's coffin that is in the Harrington Museum in Harrington, Delaware, and I found a woman's mourning hat out of black crepe. And I put those two together in a collage on the page, and that's how I told the story.
Wow.
So how can folks get a hold of your books?
They're all available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble,
Just anywhere where you get
my
books.
garage.
In your garage. Well, Dave Tabler, the name of the book's Delaware from Railways to Freeways, and then Delaware from Freeways, or Before the Railways.
Before the Railways.
Yes, I got them backwards.
And then
but-
number 3 is going to be to George Jetson.
George.
Yeah.
Jetpacks.
Jetpacks.
There you go.
Dave,
Something.
thank you so much.
Terrific. A pleasure to be here.